Welcome to the Holy Land and this biblical site of the Red Sea. We're filming this just a little bit down from Eilat, just a few miles from the Egyptian border. And we are at the Aqaba finger of the Red Sea, the believed place where the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. Absolutely phenomenal, the miracle that took place and the miracles that surrounded the nation of Israel, their deliverance out of Egypt and going into the Promised Land. We're going to be looking at the route that the Israelites took after they left Egypt and as they arrived to on the Aqaba finger of the Red Sea, where it's possible for them to go down and come up. So many recent archaeologists and scholars now believe the Israelites crossed the Red Sea at the Gulf of the Aqaba finger of the Red Sea, and that Mount Sinai, where the Israelites were headed, is located in Midian, which is modern-day Arabia, modern-day Saudi Arabia. So Midian was in Saudi Arabia. It says, "He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people." This would mean the Israelites walked a long way by traveling both day and night. So they traveled in the Gulf of Aqaba, finger of the Red Sea, in the area of Nuweiba port. Amazing evidence of coral growth on objects that look like old chariot wheels, axles, and so forth. It has been found on the shore across from Nuweiba port on the Saudi Arabian side, these same that would have come off from the Egyptians as they pursued the Israelites. The area where the Israelites would have camped is large and can accommodate 3 million people. So this Nuweiba port here that you can see is huge, and it would easily have accommodated 3 million people. Now, interestingly, the sea in this area, the ocean floor of this part, gradually goes down and then gradually goes up. Just north and south of this area are deep crevices, deep ravines in the ocean floor where the Israelites could not have crossed. So on the Aqaba finger of the Red Sea, there's this perfect spot where it's sandy, goes down gradually, goes up gradually, but it goes down almost a half of a mile down in the ocean. There have been found columns or pillars on the beach of Nuweiba and on the Saudi Arabian side that are believed markers that King Solomon built to mark the crossing of the Red Sea by the Israelites. The pillar on the Nuweiba side has been found and erected, but the pillar on the Saudi Arabian side has been removed by the government and a marker has been placed there. However, Ron Wyatt, who did much investigation about this area, found and documented the pillar on the Saudi Arabian side in the 80s. The Red Sea here, they come now, they're in Saudi Arabia, they're in what is called Midian. So to better understand that Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia in the land of Midian, we have to understand that when Moses fled Egypt and he went into the desert, it says that he went into the land of Midian, and Midian is in Saudi Arabia. Now, after they crossed the Red Sea, the Bible supports the fact, and the evidence shows that as they went to Mount Sinai, you can see evidence of the places that they went, and you can see those today in the land. In Exodus 15:22, it says, "Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and went 3 days in the wilderness, and found no water, and they came to Marah, and they couldn't drink the water there. So then Moses healed the water." Now it says in Exodus 15, it says, "Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there beside the waters." And you can see in this video, this place has been found. This very place that it talks about has been found, and it supports the biblical text. Then in Exodus 16:1, it says, "Then they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the sons of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departure from the land of Egypt. Then the Lord here provided manna after the people grumbled, and then he gave them meat in the form of quail birds to eat. And then shortly afterward, God established the Sabbath day here. And then in Exodus 18:1 it says, "Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with Moses' sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was camped at the mouth of God. This also proves that Midian was close by to Mount Sinai because Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came from there to go visit Moses." And you can see in this video here caves that are named after Jethro. Quite fascinating. After this, it says in Exodus 17, "Then all the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed by stages from the wilderness of Sin, according to the command of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, 'Give us water that we may drink.' And here is where Moses struck the rock, and water gushed out and came out from this rock." And then it says in Psalm 78, it says, "He split the rocks in the wilderness and gave them abundant drink like the ocean depths. He brought forth streams also from the rock and caused waters to run down like rivers." Now this rock is believed to have been found and shows water grooves in it where massive amounts of water ran down it. You can see in this video this rock here, and you can see the water channels as it goes down through this. Now in Isaiah 48 it says, "They did not thirst when he led them through the deserts. He made the water flow out of the rock for them. He split the rock and the water gushed forth." Here you can see an altar Moses erected after defeating the Amalekites and named it Jehovah Nissi, or more properly said as Yahweh Nissi, which means in Hebrew, "The Lord is our banner." This altar is also located right beside the rock Moses struck, where water gushed out for the Israelites to drink. These two events happened at Rephidim, where the Israelites camped for some time. After their time in Rephidim, it says in Exodus 19, "In the 3rd month after the sons of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. When they set out from Rephidim, they came to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness, and there Israel camped in front of the mountain." So to this point, the Israelites had been gone from Egypt for about 8 or so weeks. They probably arrived at the Red Sea about a week or less from the time they left Egypt. Then they went 3 days into the wilderness and camped at Marah. From Marah, they went to Elim, where they camped for several weeks. From Elim, they traveled to the wilderness of Sin. Exodus 16:1 says, "Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departure from the land of Egypt." So when they arrived at the wilderness of Sin, they had been gone from Egypt for about 6 weeks. From the wilderness of Sin, they traveled to Rephidim, where they camped for a week or so. Then they arrived at Mount Sinai in the 3rd month after leaving Egypt. The beginning of the 3rd month would have given them 2 months' time to reach Mount Sinai. They would then stay at Mount Sinai for about a year. Here they would receive the law, build a tabernacle, and be taught to obey God's laws and principles. Now there is also much evidence just south of a mountain called Jabal al-Laz that gives weighty evidence that this mountain is indeed the biblical Mount Sinai. At its base are the locations of the altar Moses made out of 12 stones, and just below that, the altar Aaron made for sacrificing to the golden calf. Additionally, it could have been seen real well by the Israelites. Now let's look at the evidence around this mountain. It's quite amazing. First, there is an altar Moses erected. In Exodus 24 it says, Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. Then he arose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. Now you can see here the remains of this altar. Also, you can see corrals where it's possible the animals were kept for sacrificing. As we pan around, you can also see the remains of what could have been the 12 stones that Moses used to build the altar of God. Second, there is the altar upon which Aaron set the golden calf, and all Israel worshipped before it. In Exodus 32 it says, Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Aaron said to them, Tear off the gold rings which are on the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me. Then all the people tore off the gold rings which were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took this from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a molten calf. And they said, This is our God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Now when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. Now you can see here this altar that Aaron would have made for the Israelites to worship this golden calf. There is also a painting here you can see of this calf as found in Egypt. It appears the Israelites copied a god from Egypt and formed an image of a golden calf and worshipped it here at this altar. There are also many inscriptions written on these rocks as well. Now interestingly, this altar, this area is fenced and gated like other archaeological sites at the base of these mountains by the Saudi government, prohibiting more excavation and investigation. However, it appears the Saudi government knows something about these places, or it wouldn't be fenced off. There has also been found a menorah, a Jewish menorah painting as well, which would give evidence to the fact that the Israelites have been here in this area. There is also a cave partway up this believed Mount Sinai that is known as Elijah's Cave. And this is where the prophet Elijah would have come after fleeing from the great showdown on Mount Carmel with the prophets of Baal and Asherah. Lastly, Mount Sinai was in the midst of fire and smoke. In Exodus 19 it says, Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire, and its smoke ascended like a smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. The top of these mountains are dark, showing possible signs of burnt marks. There are other mountains in this area that are dark as well, so this darkness is not real convincing evidence. The other evidence is much stronger in my mind. However, it's interesting that the top of these mountains, and especially this one here, is really dark. Now, in all of this, in this video, I want to be careful to not be dogmatic and give the appearance that what you have seen is totally certain. What I have attempted to show you is the evidence that seems pretty convincing of the Exodus route, the Red Sea crossing, the areas that the Israelites traveled, and the evidence at Mount Sinai. It all to me seems pretty convincing. In all actuality, however, the location of these amazing events is not what's most important. What's most important is that we believe the biblical account of what God did here and what He did to show us all of the truths He wants us to understand.